From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
You're listening to the latest episode of the Wildcast podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. It's officially March Madness. The NCAA tournament is here, and the Arizona Wildcats enter the field of 68 as a number one seed in the South region. They'll play either Wright State or Bryant in the first round of the tournament. To get Arizona fans all ready for the big dance, I interviewed my colleagues, Alec White, sports editor Ryan Finley, columnist Greg Hansen, and Arizona basketball beat writer Bruce Pascoe on Monday's Spears and Ali on ESPN Radio. Don't forget to subscribe to the Spears and Ali podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. But I took the interviews from all of our guys this week and put it together. We're getting you all ready for March Madness. First up, we have the kid himself, Alec White. It's the best time of year, March to the madness, especially right here in the old Pueblo when the Arizona Wildcats are thriving. And, you know, both the Arizona men's and women's basketball programs are thriving this season. And the women's basketball team, they'll host the first round of the NCAA tournament. They'll be the number 4 seed. And on the men's side, the top-seeded Arizona Wildcats will go out to San Diego and play the winner of Wright State Bryant in that 1-16 matchup. Here to talk all things Arizona basketball with us here on ESPN Radio is my colleague Alec White from the Arizona Daily Star. And Alec, I just want to first start off by publicly thanking you for introducing me to Fat Tuesdays, because you have forever changed my life. That is officially my drink of choice anytime I go to Las Vegas, so thank you, my friend.
Oh, of course. It was a great time that we had having some of those Fat Tuesdays after the Pac-12 tournament. It's the best bang for your buck in Vegas. Why spend outrageous amounts of money on alcohol that sometimes doesn't even taste good? It tastes like the cheap stuff when you can get a slushie that has alcohol in it. And, you know, it's a great beverage of choice if you're going to go to Las Vegas.
Alec did the podcast with you after the games, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some of the best content you two have both put out, drinking those Fat Tuesday drinks and then going and doing podcasts.
No, the Fat Tuesday drinks came afterwards.
No.
Allegedly.
Hold up there. We waited till after. Let's get the record straight.
Well, I'm not sure. It sounded pretty good to me. It sounded like you guys were having a pretty good time. Alec, you were in Vegas during the Pac-12 championships. Can you just describe for the people out there the environment and how festive it was, especially with so many Arizona fans?
Yeah, I mean, it was about 80% Arizona fans, 85% Arizona fans, and then everybody else, you know, all 11 fan bases made up the rest of, you know, the last 15%. So it was definitely Tucson North, McKale North, as they call it, at T-Mobile Arena. And it was a really great Pac-12 tournament. You had things started off crazy with Stanford beating ASU at the buzzer, and then really just some competitive matchups that went down to the end. Stanford, Arizona, UCLA, USC, and then obviously the Pac-12 championship between Arizona and UCLA. Just some really high-level basketball, and obviously it was neat to see Tommy Lloyd and company cut down the nets at the end.
And now they're going into the NCAA tournament as the number 1 seed. They'll face the winner of Wright State Bryant. But you look at their bracket, Alec, and there are some possibilities for rematches, more notably the Tennessee Volunteers as the number 3 seed. And if Arizona were to meet Tennessee, it'd be in the Elite Eight, which I'm all here for. But when you look at Arizona's bracket, you know, some would say it's pretty friendly, but I mean, I think the rematch possibilities make this more difficult for the Arizona Wildcats. Just what do you think about Arizona's path and how they can get to the Final Four?
It's one of the friendlier paths among the number 1 seeds, but it's far from a cakewalk. I tweeted this out last night that I think having the familiarity between maybe facing Tennessee again, Michigan if it makes a miracle run, or, Tennessee in that Elite Eight. I think it favors Arizona just because when you look at how the Wildcats have performed when they've faced teams multiple times, you look at how Arizona's game plan has changed. You think back to when they lost to Colorado and then beat Colorado in the Pac-12 tournament. You think of, UCLA, that first game in Pauley, Arizona looked outmatched. UCLA's defense was really forcing some bad shots from Arizona. And then you watch what they did the last two times facing the Bruins, and you really have to think that Arizona's coaching staff is going to be more than capable of coming up with a game plan if they have to face an Illinois again or a Tennessee again. So I think Arizona, has a friendly-ish bracket, but I don't love it because I still think Tennessee is very capable of beating Arizona. Same with Illinois. But I do think Villanova is a week 2 seed, so Arizona definitely got the benefit of the doubt there.
And I think Arizona is a different team this time around than when they played Tennessee earlier in the season. And one thing that's really jumped out at me about this Arizona team is that it doesn't matter what you really throw at them. They always seem to overcome the adversity. They adapt. They realize, okay, this is a situation that we're in. Let's make the most out of it, whether it's, Kirk Kriisa being out with that ankle injury, and then you got to throw in Justin Kier into the starting lineup. And then in the following game, Justin Kier, that gets into foul trouble. He picks up his fourth with like 18 minutes left. So then you got to rely on Dalen Terry to play point guard for most of the second half. But yet Arizona still overcame a double-digit deficit against a tough UCLA team and won the Pac-12 title game. I mean, that right there pretty much showed me that, I know Arizona can be thin, but, they overcome adversity, and it just seems like no matter what is thrown at them, Arizona's going to find a way to win.
Oh, absolutely. They were down 53-41, something like that, midway through the second half against UCLA. It would have been easy for the Wildcats just to say, hey, you know what, we don't have it tonight. We don't have our starting point guard. We've already locked up a number 1 seed. Arizona could have just rolled over and said, given UCLA the Pac-12 championship and said, you know what, maybe we'll see you guys in the Final Four or later on, in March Madness. But they didn't. Like you said, they battled back. They went through that adversity, and so many different players on that team stepped up, and it's why I really think that they have a legitimate chance to make the Final Four. And not only that, but you look at other national title contenders on their side of the bracket, I think they match up well against possibly Kansas in a Final Four matchup, or a Auburn, or maybe Wisconsin. I think athletically Arizona really benefits, and they're going to be an interesting team to watch.
Alec, the Pac-12 commissioner, George Kliavkoff, made a very curious statement during the tournament. I'm wondering if guys like you or Justin were able to talk to him about it. And that statement was this. He said he wouldn't mind seeing Arizona lose in the Pac-12 championship tournament so that another team got in from the Pac-12. I contend that there's still an East Coast bias, and he should be railing against the committee for not letting someone like Colorado in, who's more deserving than Michigan at 17 and 14. Was anybody able to ask the commissioner, why aren't you fighting for the conference as opposed to making a statement that essentially is relegated to, I acknowledge the fact that we're only going to have 3 teams in?
Somebody asked a question about that, and the response was, if you look at what the Pac-12 did in the non-conference, that it wasn't good enough, and had more Pac-12 teams overperformed. He threw out a stat that their winning percentage among the Pac-12 teams, all 12, had a 65% winning percentage in non-conference play, which sounds good, but then you look at past years, the previous 2 years when they've had the tournament, 2019 and 2021, when more Pac-12 teams were in, the winning percentage in the non-conference was 75%. Yeah. So I think his statement of Arizona wanting Arizona to lose was maybe a little misguided, but he cleared that up when somebody asked him about that, and the response was the Pac-12 needs to be better in non-conference play because that's why they're overlooked.
Alec, real quick, before we let you go, the Arizona women's basketball team, they're the number 4 seed in the Greensboro bracket. It's a tough one because they're in the same bracket as South Carolina. But they'll host UNLV this weekend. Sam Thomas gets a chance to play against her sister. Alyssa Brown from Saguaro gets a chance to play in Tucson, Arizona. Just your thoughts on this weekend's game in Arizona being able to host.
Well, it's great that the Wildcats can host, and more importantly, that they're on different days than the men's game. It would have been, really, really sad if the first time in a long time, second time all time, that the women's basketball team hosts an NCAA tournament game, that it's on the same time or maybe the same day as the men's, and that's not the case. The women's will play Saturday and Monday. If they win on Saturday, men's will be Friday, Sunday. So Adia Barnes has long been champion for the McKale sellout. They did it for the WNIT championship over Northwestern in 2018, and I think they're going to have a great crowd this weekend when they play UNLV, and I like their chances with Kate Reese coming back to make the Sweet 16.
Alec White from the Arizona Daily Star. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at AlecWhite_UA and check out his work on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. Alec, you're the man. Thank you as always for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
One guarantee for that UNLV-Arizona game.
What's that?
The stadium's going to be full of red.
Yeah, because both teams are red?
Yeah.
All right. Our next Arizona Daily Star guest will be Ryan Finley, sports editor. Don't go anywhere. More Spears and Ali coming up next.
Andrew may have found the perfect Finley song.
I think Andrew said, play ball! Because Major League Baseball is coming back. And here to talk all things, well, we're going to talk March Madness with him. But let's talk a little bit of baseball with Arizona Daily Star's sports editor, Ryan Finley, who joins us here on ESPN Radio. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, what's up, boys? How you guys doing?
Doing good. Real quick, just thoughts on baseball coming back.
Oh, it's good. I mean, again, it's weird. I'm relieved and I'm happy, and that makes me angry at sort of the owners all over again, because we should be right in the middle of spring training right now. And we're not. Games don't start until, this Thursday? But you know what? Some baseball is better than no baseball at all. And our March, Justin, is going to be pretty darn busy. So I guess I don't mind if we start the baseball season 6 days late.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to, obviously, the NCAA tournament. Arizona men's basketball coming in at a number 1 seed. They will be the number 1 seed in the South region, and they'll play the winner of Wright State and Bryant. And then on the women's side, the number 4 seeded Arizona Wildcats are going to be finally hosting a first round of the NCAA tournament. So you got Tommy Lloyd in his first season going to a number 1 seed. Adia Barnes finally get a chance to host the first round of the tournament. It's a good time to follow Arizona basketball, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's a best case scenario. When I was on last week, we talked about, the big questions, right? There were 2 of them. Number 1 was, will Arizona's women host and be a number 4 seed, even though they've struggled the last couple of weeks? And number 2 is, is Arizona going to go to San Diego sort of as predicted? And yesterday we went 2 for 2. So that's certainly a good starting place for both teams. Both of them are going to have challenges in March. I still think Arizona's women are going to have a major challenge at home this weekend. But you know what? They both have pretty good starting points, and could very well have a very productive, successful NCAA tournament run.
Hey, Ryan, I just can't get over the fact of the development in season of guys like Omar Ballo, and then a guy that wasn't even supposed to play this year in Adama Ball, coming off the bench and hitting 2 big threes in the Pac-12 championship game. Can you recall another time in the men's basketball program history where 2 players are developed so much for the team during the season?
Again, just kind of off the top of my head, the answer is no. With Sean Miller, I think he developed a shortish bench, and you really had to prove yourself before he'd make you a part of the rotation. There was not a whole lot of learning on the fly there. We've seen some learning on the fly with this team, right? Adama Ball, again, a guy I'm not sure you or I could have picked out of a crowd a month ago, saw some big moments towards the end of the regular season, and then again at the Pac-12 tournament. Then, you look at Umar Ballo, who went from being just kind of a big dude to being, I think, a really singular force in the Pac-12. Christian Coloco's had a great year and a really good career up until this point. I think Umar Ballo could really be special. He's certainly got the body for it, the work ethic, and he's just a beast inside. Two guys who probably, you and I would not have said in October or November that these two guys would be contributing, and right now they're two rotation guys who have Arizona poised again for big things.
Did the Pac-12 tournament show you that Arizona, it doesn't matter what's really in front of them, that they can overcome a little bit of adversity and do whatever it takes to win games?
I don't know. I don't want to read too much into a conference tournament. It's
okay.
Weird, right? It's like we said all last week, it doesn't matter what happens at the Pac-12 tournament. And then they win the Pac-12 tournament, and we go, well, see how much it matters? It matters now because they won, right? I don't know. I think...
But Ryan, I was going to say, I don't think it matters that they won. I just think it was how they won in terms of Kirk Kriisa going down, Justin Kier even getting into foul trouble. And it's like, okay, well, let's put this guy in Dalen Terry. I know he played point guard in high school, but in terms of minutes at point guard at Arizona, not often did Dalen Terry ever really handle the ball. So I think it was more so how they were able to win is really to me a sign of optimism for Arizona.
Oh, yeah, and I get your point. And to do it without your starting point guard, the guy who makes everything go, I think is really good. Certainly, I think the weekend in Vegas was good for them. They got to face some adversity and feel what it's like to play in a lose-and-go-home tournament. The flip side is they lost their starting point guard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a whole lot of good you can take out of that. This is a guy who, yes, he was a little bit of an inconsistent shooter during the season and somebody who every once in a while would make a mistake, but he was the best point guard on their roster, still is. You hope for the sake of the kid that he can play this week. If this is something that's going to keep him out for the NCAA tournament, we might look back at the Pac-12 tournament as being sort of a bittersweet time, right? The good part is they won it. The bad part is they lost kind of the engine to what they do, to what looks like a pretty grisly injury.
I would say the tournament is kind of a microcosm of their entire season and the resilience they've shown against adversity and the way they've played together. And from my perspective, Ryan, if this team plays selfless as they have, plays with the kind of joy where they root for each other in the manner that they have, and takes care of the ball, doesn't turn it over, I think it's going to be really difficult to beat Arizona in the NCAA tournament. What's your take on that?
I agree. And by the way, just as an aside, I think the UCLA game was a microcosm of the Pac-12 tournament, which has been a microcosm of their season, right? It's, struggle, get super hot. Next thing you know, you're scoring 10, 12, 14 points at a time. To me, the fun of this team is that they're so streaky, is that they can pile points and points and points on top of each other. But you're right. This isn't like the Derek Williams year, where you sit there and you go, well, if Derek Williams can score 36 points, Arizona's going to win this tournament game, right? This isn't like Ari McDonald in last year's NCAA tournament, where you go, well, if she's on, they're going to win. Arizona has some more margin for error because they have so many different guys who can step up in any given game. There's depth there, and real depth. Not just guys coming off the bench, but guys who can come off the bench and really make an impact. And I think when you look at what championship teams are made of, if we look at the last 5, 10 NCAA champions, they're built a lot more like this year's Arizona team than maybe some past Arizona teams. This year's Arizona team, I think, has the personnel to win it all. And that's, it's incredible to me, guys. You look at this roster and what they've been able to do. They could win the whole thing. Now,
when you look at their region, though, Ryan, is there one or two teams that really, makes you perk up your eyebrows and say maybe they can give Arizona some problems?
Isn't Houston in their region, Justin?
Yes, they are. They're the number 5 seed.
Yeah, Houston makes me nervous because, again, you look at a team in terms of just athleticism, guys who really do defend and play really well on that side of the ball. Houston makes me nervous a lot. This is I don't know if you watched them much this year, but they've lost. I think their 2 leading scorers, but still managed to win their league tournament. But this is a team that's super athletic, and you worry about them, I think, at some point down the stretch. But the crazy part about being a number 1 seed is, you're the one everybody's worrying about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Arizona's too terribly concerned about their road. I think that they got a very favorable draw. I think that this is a team that, if it plays the way it's capable of, can make a Final Four without breaking a sweat. But they're going to have to play well, and they're going to have to play well with their starting point guard either out or severely limited. So that's the big drama heading into to Friday's opener.
Now, Ryan, when you look back on Arizona's tournament history, what's like the most memorable event that you went to covering the Wildcats?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to sound old, but so what? Probably before you were born, probably, Justin. The 1994 NCAA tournament. Ali, were you there?
I was there in Charlotte.
Oh, cool. I was in L.A. the weekend before, and it was Mizzou, Syracuse, Arizona, and Louisville.
Yep.
In that regional at the old L.A. Sports Arena. And, the 4 coaches were 4 legends, right? It was Norm Stewart at Mizzou, Boeheim, who's still at Syracuse somehow, Denny Crum at Louisville, and Lute Olson. And, the championship game in that region, we went to the whole weekend's worth of games. I was in junior high or high school. And then the championship game was Arizona versus Missouri. Arizona had Damon Stoudemire. It was crazy. I remember just being a kid and being floored at how many people came to L.A. for this game wearing red. And how, the nice shot buddy stuff was a huge deal every time Mizzou or Louisville missed a field goal, right? It was crazy. It was really the moment that introduced to the power of Arizona basketball fans and how impressive they can be.
I was there, too, and I think Norm Stewart really lost his mind in that game. And I think we handled Missouri pretty well, right?
Right, yes, they did. I do remember Norm Stewart losing it in that game. But crazy. What are the odds you get a bracket with those 4 coaches,
right,
too? All of them Hall of Famers in their own right. Crazy, just crazy.
Ryan Finley, sports editor of the Arizona Daily Star, for all tournament, this NCAA tournament and during March Madness. Make sure you go to the Wildcaster app, download it for free off the App Store and Google Play. All the coverage you need from the Arizona Daily Star, available at your fingertips on the Wildcaster app. And, of course, you can always go to Tucson.com. Ryan, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, boys. We'll talk soon.
Talk to you later. All right, our next Arizona Daily Star guest will be Greg Hansen coming up next. And we're going to wrap up hour number 2 right here on ESPN Radio. Nobody at the Arizona Daily Star has covered the NCAA tournament more than our guy, Greg Hansen. Arizona Daily Star is a longtime columnist. He joins us here on Spears at Ali. Greg, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for calling. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I know you flew back early from the Pac-12 tournament because you had a little event at the Tucson Festival of Books. Can you tell our listeners about that, Greg?
That Festival of Books is so spectacular. I think yesterday there were more than 40,000 people there when I got there at about 1:30, and it was just, to me, it was jaw-dropping. Every tent I stopped to look in, it was some famous author, like Joe Posnowski, one of maybe the best active baseball writer in America right now. He was there. He must have had 200 people in his tent. It was big time.
Well, if you say 40,000 people were there, I'm pretty sure that 35,000 were there to see you, Mr. Greg Hansen, because you had an event where you were actually able to speak to readers. And Greg's being very humble right now, Ali, but a lot of people actually lined up, like starting at like 8:30 in the morning, 9 o'clock, to see Greg Hansen speak at like noon. So people were waiting hours to meet Mr. Hansen.
Well, it's nothing different than when he's at the office and it's you lined up with Alec White and Pasco and all those guys.
Yeah.
Just to get 2 minutes of his time.
Exactly.
Yeah, your numbers are way off, Justin. You said 35,000. Take all the zeros off of there, 35.
But how awesome was that, Greg, just to, get out there and talk to readers and meet people who have a genuine interest in your work in the Arizona Daily Star?
Hey, it was so humbling. And of all people, one of the U of A coaches I respect so much, Frank Bush, and his wife Patty showed up. And I couldn't get any words out. I was fighting back tears. It was, I couldn't believe how humbling it was, and it was just such a fun to be part of it.
Well, Greg, I'm really happy you were able to enjoy that experience, and I've always had such a great deal of respect for you. I've read your column, I read your Sunday Notebook every week growing up, and the fact that I get to actually work with you, it is an absolute privilege, Greg. It is an absolute privilege. I'm honored to call you a coworker now.
You should be saying that about Ali. I saw him play football in high school.
Well, I got to tell you,
I have respect for.
Justin said it perfectly, Greg, and you deserve a lot of accolades for everything. But, the one point of jealousy I have over my two younger brothers is every time my name appears in the Sunday Notebook. And if it's in there, they are so envious. I'll always have that over them because I'm never going to give you their first names or tell you anything that they've accomplished. And I'm going to do that on purpose. But, Greg, turning to Arizona basketball, I really want to get your perspective on this. So, to me, as Arizona fans, we've been very fortunate for the great tradition that is Arizona men's basketball. But there's been those moments where a team just had that special it factor. And the two teams I could think of was the 87-88 Wildcats that went 35-3 and lost to Oklahoma in the Final Four with Elliott and Kerr and Kenny Lofton and Anthony Cook. That team had that special feeling about it. The 2011 team a little bit was a season of renewal with Sean Miller when they lost to UConn in the Elite Eight. But this year's team seems that it's got that kind of special feeling to it going into the tournament. Am I missing anybody?
I think the 88 and 89 teams had that special feel. And beyond that, I thought the 2001 team had the special feel.
Yeah.
Those are the three I would put alone until this team came along, because as the year went on, you kept going, are they really that good? And to me, by beating UCLA, who I think is really that good, it puts them there now, 31-3. That, I know the Pac-12 wasn't that good this year, but still, 31-3 doesn't lie. And the way they atoned for the two losses in the league. Just as you get excited, though, you have to proceed with caution, because you remember all those years. Seton Hall, who Arizona might play Sunday, twice knocked out really good Arizona teams. And Seton Hall was a Midland seed then, and they're a Midland seed now. And it just reminds me how difficult every round is.
Greg, when you look at the entire field, are there any teams that you think could really give some Arizona problems leading up to the Final Four?
Oh yeah, Illinois and Tennessee.
Yeah,
we all saw those games, and to me, the SEC and the Big Ten were so good this year, and that's the one advantage they have over Arizona is they consistently played top 25 competition all year, and Arizona didn't have to do that. But I think by getting through the Pac-12 tournament the way they did, because on the day Arizona played Stanford and Colorado, don't you think both of those teams played at top 25 level?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, why wasn't Stanford good all year? I kept watching them, and late in the game, I think I turned to Justin and said, how did this team go 16-16?
Yeah.
They had players.
Yeah.
Just maybe it's coaching. I don't know.
Mm.
And, they went from being the hunter to being hunted, and they were able to be so resilient. Greg, I guess after so many years of being in sports and covering sports, you start rooting for people more than teams or laundry. Whether it's the men's or women's basketball team, I'd put them in the same category. With Adia Barnes and Tommy Lloyd, both teams are just really hard not to root for, right?
When you got engaging communicators like Adia and Tommy, good people that come before being good coaches, to me that changes everything. And you can see by the way the team responds. And after that, the fans respond, and that's what sets this team apart. Can you imagine a heartbreak if this team doesn't get to, say, the Elite Eight? It's just going to – we've seen it before, too, though, but they're just so likable. I know I'm not crossing the line journalistically, but they're so likable.
You know, this team, though, it's amazing how far they have come because they entered the season unranked, and it's just baffling to me, Greg. I went back and looked at the Pac-12 preseason media poll during the tournament, and I knew that they were tied for fourth in the conference. I completely forgot that they were tied with Oregon State. And Oregon State finished the season with 3 wins while Arizona had 3 losses. So completely different seasons for Oregon State and Arizona, but you know they were tied to finish fourth in the conference. And then Arizona goes from unranked to now considered one of the top teams in college basketball, and seems like a national favorite to win the whole thing. If you ask national pundits like Jay Billis and Scott Van Pelt, it's just amazing to see Arizona kind of overcome all of these expectations. Have you ever seen anything like this in Arizona basketball where, I mean, they just smashed the expectations out of the park?
No, I haven't, but I did see that 1981 I lived in Oregon, and I covered Oregon State, and they were number 1 all year, 26-0. And that's what gives me a moment of pause here. 40 years later, is that Oregon State team had every single thing. 26-0, they lost 1 game. They open up against Kansas State, which was like a 8th seed then. The seeding was different then. And they lost. The greatest team in the history of the school lost on a last-second shot by Rolando Blackman. And it was like the entire community was in tears for a year, and they never got it back. So I always think of that one. I thought of it when Lute went in as a big favorite. That Oregon State team, one of the top 3 or 4 teams in Pac-12 history, didn't win a game.
And also, Greg, this year is the 25th anniversary of the 1997 National Championship. Yeah. I'm sure you got all sorts of memories from that year. What do you remember about covering the Cats during that time?
The first 2 games were so hard. South Alabama had them down 8 with 5 minutes to go. And I remember sitting there going, how am I going to change my flight to get back to Tucson out of Memphis? And, of course, then Miles Simon rallied them and they beat South Alabama. And the next game against College of Charleston was even harder. Remember that? Remember that, Ollie?
Oh, yeah.
It came down to the last shot to that Jermel President, of all things. That was his name, wasn't it? Jermel President?
That's right. That's right.
Had the last shot to beat him, and he missed. And 10 days later, Arizona's in the Final Four. And those 2 games were against nobodies, against a national championship team, and Arizona just survived. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but those games are hard to get out of your memories.
Absolutely.
Well, thankfully, Ronaldo Blackman is no longer playing after an excellent career with the Dallas Mavericks, so hopefully we don't run into that. But, there's going to be a game or 2 that are going to be nip and tuck, and, it's a crapshoot in March. But, from my perspective, Greg, it seems like the town is electrified in a way. I guess that 87-88 team that was 35-3 that I just don't remember for a long time. Maybe 2001, you're right.
Hey, Greg, real quick, before we let you go, what was the most disappointing team that didn't win a national championship at Arizona? What was the one team that you thought really could have won the national championship? Maybe outside of 2001 because they were in the game, but what was one team that you were like, man, they should have won a national championship?
1989, Sean Elliott's last game, because it was the most dreadful field of the Final Four ever. It was Seton Hall, a bad Michigan team. And, of course, they lose to Tark. UNLV had the second-best team of the tournament, and it came down to that last three-pointer in the Sweet 16, and Arizona lost. And I thought they would have breezed. They would have played Seton Hall the next game. They would have beaten Seton Hall. And then the Final Four had nobody in it. I just thought that was the year. That was wide open.
Greg Hansen, Arizona Daily Star sports columnist, joining Spears and Ali on ESPN Radio. Make sure you check out Greg's work on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. Greg, as always, we appreciate you. It's always nice talking Arizona basketball with us on ESPN Radio.
Thanks. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Greg. See you in San Diego. Let's go ahead and bring on the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce Pascoe from the Arizona Daily Star, talking all things Arizona basketball with us here on Spears and Ali. So, Bruce, Arizona gets the number 1 seed in the South region. They'll play the winner of Wright State and Bryant, and if they beat the winner of that game, they'll then go on to play the winner of TCU Seton Hall. But there are some other interesting potential matchups that Arizona could face if they want to get to the Final Four. What do you think about Arizona's region?
I think it's about as good as they could expect. I mean, and probably the best thing for them is that if they get Illinois, that game is going to be in San Antonio, not Chicago. And, I mean, they earned that. The committee wouldn't put a 4 in its home backyard to play a 1 in that situation. So, yeah, no, that was good for them, I think, and then on the other side of the bracket, if they get there, yeah, I mean, they could see Tennessee again, and that kind of is not a surprise. Tennessee's finished really well, and they got a 3, and you could even argue they might get a 2. So that makes it tough in that sense. But Arizona will only have to face either Tennessee or Villanova or somebody else from that side if they even get that far. So I think it's a pretty good bracket for them.
Now, I know,
and the placement's good too. San Diego and San Antonio. I don't think they can argue with that.
I know Arizona, they didn't need to win outside of maybe that first game against Stanford to solidify the number 1 seed. I think once they held off the Cardinal on Thursday, I thought, to me, it didn't matter what they did on Friday and Saturday. They were going to be a number 1 seed regardless. But yet they still beat Colorado even without Kirk Kriisa. Then Justin Kier gets into foul trouble. They're down double digits against UCLA. They find a way to rally back and win. I mean, there were opportunities where Arizona could have just easily said, okay, let's pack it up. Let's go to the NCAA tournament as the number 1 seed. But they didn't do that. To me, I think that's just really a positive sign for Arizona that, I mean, they just have this competitiveness. They have a spirit that they're going to win at all costs no matter what.
Yeah, that was the thing that jumped out at me. And just, the resiliency and the energy. You're right, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they beat UCLA. They shot 50% against, or 51% against what's been one of the hottest defenses around lately. And in a championship game, they didn't need to win without their point guard. It basically was just 7 guys, plus those flash of Adama Ball there. I mean, that was really impressive. How they were able to put all that together, when, again, they didn't need it. I mean, there's some coaches out there that would be like, in this situation, would be like, you know what, let's just lose Friday, get the extra day off, get the guys a little upset that they lost, and have an extra day to rest, and in this case, get your injured player back in better shape or whatever. But they went the other direction and decided, like you said, very competitive. They love winning, and it's fun. So here it goes, and that's really the thing that jumps out at you.
Bruce, the way this team has played this year, both in the preseason tournament, during the regular season, the Pac-12 tournament, the joy, the selflessness, the resiliency, the spirit that you guys were talking about. What is it going to take? What kind of team does Arizona not want to face going into the tournament? Is there a specific style, or does it matter? This team is malleable.
Well, they are very malleable. I mean, that's probably their biggest strength as much as anything is the way they can handle so many different kinds of matchups and win in so many different ways. But I guess, I mean, if you had to say, they've maybe, I think the Colorado game, you can't really look at that loss anyway, the one in Boulder, just because it was high altitude and they ran out of energy in that one, and who knows what that is. But other times when they've kind of struggled, I think, when teams have size that can go at them and maybe get Tubelis and or Coloco in foul trouble. Stanford has given them, they lost three times to Arizona, but in every game, Stanford had moments where, they were making it tough for them. Tennessee got the bigs in foul trouble, and Illinois was a tough matchup for them as well with Kofi Coburn and those guys they have up front there. So that might be it. And I mean, but I think it probably has to come along with some foul trouble and or injuries if people are going to get past Arizona, because Arizona's shown that they're resilient and they can win in so many different ways.
Now, Kirk Kriisa, Arizona's point guard, posted a photo of his foot last night on social media. That looked pretty brutal, Bruce. I wasn't expecting it to look that, black and red. It was that's a very scary ankle injury, but it looks like, I mean, Tommy Lloyd's very optimistic that Kirk Reese is going to be ready to go. And Kirk Reese has been, rehabbing with Justin Kokoski. He's been in the pool doing some rehab, and he's looking like he could return for the first and second round.
Yeah, it was funny. I was actually reading some of the replies to that, and there was like a retired nurse on there, and she's like, "Hey, that's pretty impressive. You'll be back. You could do this, blah blah blah." And I think it probably could have been worse, but yeah, it looks pretty ugly. But I mean, it's an ankle injury. It's probably, they're not saying exactly, but it sounds like it's kind of middle of the road, kind of not one of those 1 or 2 day deals, but something you can probably get pretty much 80%, 90% in a week. And especially with the technology and the staff that Arizona has, I think that's probably what he's looking at. And then the question is, kind of like it was last weekend, is like, do you really want him to play on Friday? Do they really need him in that game? Could an extra couple of days off of that help? Or if he's to the point where it's not going to risk getting any worse than it would if you were fully healthy, then maybe he goes out there just to get his rhythm back and go that direction. And that'd kind of be what I guess. And just because he, like as a tone setter for the guys we're talking about, he has that spirit, and I'm sure he'd want to get out there. I don't think he's going to care if it's Wright State or Bryant or anybody else for that matter. He's probably going to want to play.
Bruce, Lute Olson used to look at the NCAA tournament as, basically every single round was a separate 4-team tournament, and all you got to do is win that 4-team tournament, then you move on to the next tournament. Has Coach Tommy Lloyd talked about the way he looks at going into the tournament and his strategy?
Exactly the same thing. And I think a lot of coaches do that, and that is the way. You can't look at this massive 68 team thing, and start to think, well, we could see Illinois, we could see Tennessee, blah, 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 maybe Seton Hall, who knows, whatever, and that'll drive you nuts. So, yeah, and it's actually good for the coaches to, they can kind of look at it as mini tournament. And the words Tommy Lloyd literally used yesterday were, well, in our case, it's actually a 5-team tournament because we got Wright State and Bryant that are in it, and they're trying to get here. So, yeah, that is the way they're looking at it. I mean, he's an all season, too. He's been a, next game vision kind of guy. He doesn't get too down the road on you. The good thing is he'll talk about it a little bit if we ask him, hey, what about this game coming up or whatever, but you can tell his focus is on that, whereas some coaches will say, I'm not thinking about anything except the next game, but they are. Tommy appears to be pretty much focused on the, on what's ahead, but also realistic about, that everybody's talking about other stuff too.
Who's really impressed you the most over the last week or so on Arizona's roster? Is it Ben Mathurin? Is it a guy like Christian Coloco? Who's really improved their play at the right time entering the NCAA tournament?
Well, we've talked all season. All these guys are better. I mean, I think probably aside from the little bit that Ball played and maybe gave you a flash of what he can do down the road, I think probably Dale and Terry jumped out at me the most because of, with Krisa being hurt and, needing point guard, and also just because he seems like, as much as he likes making the fancy pass and all that was at times, we've seen it especially earlier in the years, sometimes he get in trouble, turn the ball over, trying to do something that he doesn't need to do, but he's getting, a lot more careful about that and still actually, without losing his, really artful passing and athletic game. So, that kind of struck me. I mean, and this was going into it when everybody's talking about him as a glue guy and, and this and that. And there he was again on a really high stage, kind of doing a little bit of everything, especially passing the ball.
Bruce Pascoe from the Arizona Daily Star talking all things U of A hoops with us here on ESPN Radio. For NCAA tournament coverage, make sure you follow Bruce on Twitter at Bruce Pascoe and check out his work on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app, which you can download for free off the App Store and Google Play. Bruce, thank you for your time. I'll see you in San Diego.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bruce.
Care.
And also, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildcast podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, more ESPN Radio coming up next.